The Saturn 1B rocket to carry astronauts Alan Bean,
Owen Garriott, and Jack Lousma to their rendezvous this afternoon with the orbiting Skylab workshop.
Essentially to isolate them from any other.
Let's listen to Kennedy Launch Control
on the operational intercom system here in the firing room, which link together the various members of the launch team. Also, as the count resumes, the spacecraft will be going to full internal power. Up to this point, it has been powered by the fuel cells aboard the spacecraft, but also it has had a ground source fed to it as a backup. We're about to resume the count. Mark, T-minus 15 minutes and counting now. Preparations underway at this time now to chill the systems in the second stage, which will be receiving the very cold liquid hydrogen after first stage burnout and as the second stage ignites. T-minus 14 minutes, 45 seconds and counting. This is Kennedy Launch Control.
Jay, if everything goes well, and so far it's been doing just that, there was just one minor problem this morning and they fixed it right away. This mission's going to be the longest manned space journey in the history of this program.
I don't think people have thought hard enough yet to realize how long 59 days is in weightlessness. And this is what they will be attempting. The mission at first was to be 56 days, but because of the desirability to reach a recovery area in the Pacific much closer to San Diego, and under the orbital track, they extended it 3 days. So it's 59 days. That's 2 months of in this house-sized space station up there. They have plenty of room, plenty of food, and plenty of comfort. But again, in weightlessness for 59 days, that's tremendous to think about. The longest man has been up there so far, as you know, Mike, is 28 days.
Jay, I think one of the best ways we can explain the length of this is that 4 weeks from now, or 5 weeks from now, my kids will go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks after that, Bean, Garriott, and Lousma are going to come back from their space trip that begins today,
September 25th.
Now, that's a long time. They've been gone from their families for 3 weeks now, and they are now in isolation. They've been in isolation. That's to try to eliminate the medical difficulties. The problem I mentioned earlier that said that they had repaired was with a sticky valve in a fuel line and had a little leak in it. And it's sort of like putting a cork in it. They got it fixed. They didn't have to interrupt the countdown, which is now 13 minutes and counting. So everything's going well.
Sure is. Here at the Cape, or we should say Kennedy Space Center, the sun is up. We have a partly cloudy sky, cloudy overcast, nothing that will interfere with the launch. Everything is going well. Weather's good. And we have a pretty good-sized crowd. Even more people than I expected would show up. And I don't know, I haven't had any report yet how many are stationed along the causeways and highways as in the past, but appeared coming out this morning in the traffic situation. There were a lot of people coming out on the Saturday morning to get a look at this launch. Of course, the Saturn 1B rocket has nothing of the thrust compared to the Saturn V rockets that hurl the people to the moon.
Jay, we're going to take a break now for the news. We'll be back immediately after NBC News on the Hour with live coverage of the launch of the second Skylab crew. That launch in the countdown right now is 12 minutes away. I'm Mike Moss, along with Jay Barbary, NBC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
If you never saw the green grass anymore, 'cause it's covered up by litter from the folks there before you, what would you do? What would you do? If you never saw the sky, or the soot that's in your eye, or the garbage piled so high, what would you do? You've got to pitch in to clean up America. You've got to pitch in to clean up America. 'Cause if everybody wants pitch in to clean up America, it won't be America anymore. Oh, no.
WMAQ, Chicago.
Be partly sunny today, high low 80s, chance of afternoon showers, 65 degrees at 6 a.m. in Chicago.
NBC Monitor News on the Hour, brought to you by Firestone, the people tire people, who put steel between you and tire trouble. Now, here is Peter Hackett.
The crew of a second Skylab flight is about to be launched into Earth orbit to spend the next 2 months living and working without gravity in their space experiment station 270 miles over the Earth. Jay Barbary reports from Cape Kennedy.
Skylab's second crew of astronauts is aboard the Apollo command ship waiting for blastoff in 10 minutes to begin man's longest scheduled space flight, a 59-day mission to study the sun, stars, Earth, and man himself. During these final minutes of the countdown, astronauts Alan Bean, Dr. Owen Garriott, and Jack Lausma are checking all systems along with the launch team to make sure the Saturn 1B rocket is ready to safely carry them to a rendezvous with Skylab. The space laboratory is circling Earth 270 miles overhead, and once the astronauts have lifted off, they'll spend 8.5 hours in pursuit of the space station. If rendezvous and docking are successful, the crew will board Skylab tomorrow to begin 2 months of difficult space tests that should tell scientists if man has the physical stamina to one day reach the planets. Jay Barbary, NBC News at the Kennedy Space Center.
More news after this from Firestone.
The new cars are coming. The new 74 cars will be introduced soon. Firestone can't tell you what they'll look like, but Firestone can tell you the tire you'll see on many of them will be Firestone's Deluxe Champion polyester fiberglass double-belted tire. And participating Firestone dealers and stores can offer you this tire today for your car at special prices. Only $100 for a set of 4 Whitewall Deluxe Champions, plus federal excise tax from $1.81 to $2.54 per tire, and your old tires. That's for sizes A7813 through F7815 to fit small and many medium-sized cars. Comparable savings on other sizes, too. Firestone's Deluxe Champion, the double-belted tire that will be on many new cars, now at special prices at Firestone dealers and stores.
A prison rebellion is underway in Oklahoma. To Peter Nolan in McAllister.
The prisoners are still holding 19 hostages, including the deputy warden. Prison officials have been meeting regularly with inmate leaders, and they report that none of the hostages has been harmed. Oklahoma Governor David Hall still says he will not meet with the prisoners until they release all hostages and return to their cells. Fires inside the walls continue to burn through the night. At least half the buildings in the complex reportedly have been destroyed. At least 2 inmates are known dead and 16 others have been injured. Several hundred National Guardsmen, state and local policemen surround the institution, but so far there has been no attempt to retake control of the prison. Peter Nolan, NBC News in McAllister, Oklahoma.
At Watkins Glen in upstate New York, a mass of humanity continues to swell as more thousands of young people move into an auto racetrack grounds for a rock festival. New York State Trooper Robert Ermold reports.
Things are so plugged up. All roads, there's no traffic moving anywhere. The roads going up to the track, cars are stopped, 3 and 4 abreast on a 2-lane highway. The shoulders are plugged. People have abandoned cars. There's no way to get a vehicle in or out.
Trooper Ermold says helicopters will be in use later today. He says even more rock music fans are expected to try to squeeze onto the auto racetrack. With the Senate Watergate Committee in recess for the weekend, staff members led by Chief Counsel Samuel Dash are said to be working on a court presentation they'll make early next week in an effort to force President Nixon to release some tape recordings the committee says it wants. Dash says the 7 committee members will probably hold a private session Monday morning to consider recommendations of several leading constitutional law experts who are now being consulted. The Senate holds a Saturday session today to continue work on a campaign reform bill expected to pass late today or early next week. Among other amendments to be debated is one which would limit any individual's total campaign contributions to $25,000 to all candidates running for federal office in any one year. Major banks around the country have announced they're raising their prime interest rates again, up from 8.5% to 8.75%. It's the 11th such interest rate increase this year. President Nixon is spending the weekend at the Presidential Mountain Lodge, Camp David, in the Maryland mountains. The president is said to be preparing for the visits next week of the prime ministers of Australia and Japan. The hour's lead story, a second Skylab crew is about to be launched into Earth orbit to spend the next 2 months in their space experiment station. Peter Hackus, NBC News.
5 minutes after the hour 6. How you doing on a Saturday morning? Let's check out the old Skylab launch in NBC. Meanwhile, let's check the weather here in Chicago. Sunny chance of some showers in the afternoon or evening. High in the lower 80s. Tonight, partly cloudy chance of showers. Low in the lower 60s. And Sunday, partly sunny and pleasant. Back to NBC.
This is NBC News, the launch of the second Skylab crew. I'm Mike Moss, along with Jay Barbrie, NBC News at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we are now 4 minutes, 55 seconds and counting away from the launch of astronauts Alan Bean, Owen Garriott, and Jack Lausma. Jay, was at a beautiful sunrise here at Cape Kennedy. It's about 75, 76 degrees. There's no wind. It's just a lovely morning, but that rocket, which is out there on Pad V of Launch Complex 39, is very difficult to see because we have a ground fog here, but that's not going to interfere with the launch, is it?
Certainly not, Mike. There's nothing in the area weather-wise to interfere with the second liftoff here of Skylab astronauts, and everything is on schedule, as you said, 4 minutes, 18 seconds away. In just a moment here, we've been eavesdropping on launch control. They tell us everything is fine here also at the Mission Control Center in Houston, and everything has been given, as they say here, a go for launch. So everything is set. And within, 31 seconds to be exact, the automatic sequencer, this is the computer that actually launched the rocket, will take over, and we should have a liftoff on time, and I believe that is to come exactly at 10 minutes and 50 seconds. They're saying now past the hour.
This rocket is kind of an interesting thing. It's about, 160 or 170 feet tall, and it's standing on top of a 127-foot tall platform, which, for want of anything else, looks just like a great big kitchen stool or a milk stool. Here's mission control.
30 seconds and continuing to count. Launch vehicle test conductor Norm Carlson has reported to the test supervisor that the launch vehicle is cleared for a launch. Essentially, what he is saying is the launch vehicle is ready to go on the automatic sequencer. The automatic sequencer comes into play at T-minus 3 minutes, 7 seconds in the countdown. Launch sequence has started now. We passed the 3 minute 7 seconds mark, and we're on the automatic sequencer. Liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen have been being replenished up to this point. That replenished now will be terminated. The vents will be closed, and the fuel tanks will be pressurized.
This is Charles Hollinshead, located in the Launch Control Center here, giving us all the technical information necessary here before the launch takes off. Just to reestablish again, this will be the beginning of man's longest space flight. 59 days, almost 2 months in space. It'll more than double the current space endurance record, that of 28 days set by the Skylab I crew earlier this year. In fact, they just returned last month.
Jay, these experiments that are going to be conducted by the men in space will concentrate primarily in this mission on what they call the ATM series. These are the telescope mount series that study the sun and the stars. Last time, we're now 2 minutes away from the launch and counting, just to keep you up to date. During the last mission, they concentrated on some of the other activities, but they got some fantastic pictures of the sun. They said that the data that they received from their solar experiments was better than any data that had ever been collected before by all of the scientific experimenting that had been conducted.
That's right, Mike.
They're just moving ahead, and they expect that this is going to be really a quantum leap forward in the amount of information that they can gather.
As you know, Mike, on the first crew, the scientist pilot was a medical doctor, and Dr. Owen Garriott, who is the scientist pilot on this crew, is a solar physicist. So they are looking quite forward to this, and now we're a minute, 14 seconds away from the launch. We might explain here, too, that Mike Moss is outside at our launch platform to give you a description of the liftoff, and he's standing by. So here within a minute and 2 seconds, we should have the liftoff and a description of that launch by Mike Moss.
Jay, there's still quite a bit of fog, and so what we describe may be more what we feel than what we see. The launch of this rocket tends to send out shock waves
And at this point, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to see exactly what happens other than that bright, blinding flash that comes out as ignition takes place. We're now 30 seconds away from launch, and we are counting.
Minus 30 seconds. Minus 30 seconds and counting.
The astronauts are in place. They're in their capsule, and they're all ready to go. They said that they were very eager to move ahead. 20 seconds away from launch right now.
At which time we'll get liftoff. We'll be looking for liftoff right at the T0 mark. We passed the 15-second mark in the count. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. We have ignition sequence start. All ignitions are running. All engines running. We have a liftoff. And the second man crew has cleared the tower.
Jay, there it goes. You can see that bright, blinding flash as it burns away the fog from the... And there you can begin to hear it now. You can't hear it initially. You can just see it. But you still can't quite feel it. It's not quite like the Saturn V when it comes here. But the roar is still deafening. It's now up to the clouds and pushing up higher and higher. That bright flash just lighting up this whole area around the Kennedy Space Center. The ground is shaking. You can feel that in the legs that it begins to bounce a little bit. And as it goes up, it begins to arc over now and head up on that northeasterly course. The rumble you can still hear. And there it burns its way through the clouds. It literally burns a hole in the clouds. And now the Saturn 1B, with the men on top of it, is out of sight. It's not out of sound, though. You can still hear it, and you can still feel it here at the Kennedy Space Center. Jay, let's go back into you. Thank you, Mike. We are now picking up information from the Mission Control Center in Houston and the actual voices of the astronauts. We'll join that conversation and keep you posted as the Saturn 1B continues to place the second Skylab crew into orbit. The voices of the astronauts reporting to the Mission Control Center as they rocket into orbit now. The rocket has faded from view here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Now, 5 miles downrange. Velocity 3,280 feet per second. Thrust still looking good. Trajectory looking good.
That is the voice of Jack Riley, who is located in Mission Control.
Stand by for mode 1 Charlie capability. Mark, 1 Charlie.
Understand.
Command Pilot Alan Bean reporting back to the Mission Control Center, the
Skylab
capsule
Houston, go
communicator.
for staking.
Roger, go ahead.
Coming up to the burnout of the first stage. This is the
22 miles high, 19 miles downrange, velocity 5,800.
Skylab Houston, thrust looks good on S4B.
okay. The
That's good news.
second engine is burning as it
2
should.
minutes, 45 seconds. Altitude 41.5 miles. Velocity 7,695 feet per second. Downrange 60 miles now.
Roger, Tower Jetson, you're mode 2.
They're now going better than 1.5 miles each second.
Guidance initiate.
Roger. Everything's looking real good. You're going 3 minutes.
Nice and bright up here in the sun.
Roger.
Which is much different than it is down here on the ground at Cape Kennedy. Mike has returned
3 minutes,
from his
15
observation
seconds.
platform and
Altitude
back here
55
with us.
miles. Downrange 90 miles. Velocity 8,189 feet per second. Thrust still good on the second stage.
It'll be about 10 minutes after liftoff when they actually achieve their orbital parameter, as they say. They get into the right circle to put them in the catch-up phase of their mission. They'll make 5 trips around.
Okay, Dick, the cabin pressure's locked up real good here. You should see that tower go.
Roger, understand.
That's Dick Truly, astronaut Dick Truly in the Mission Control Center in Houston,
And we're going 4 minutes.
who is a capsule communicator and voice
Roger,
contact.
Skylab, we concur. You go at 4.
When they say you should have seen that tower go, that means that they have jettisoned the launch escape tower. Is that right? I hope so. But I don't think they took the tower with them, right?
70 miles.
That's what they mean, of course, is the launch escape tower, which is the device used to pull the command ship free of the rocket in case of trouble. They are now in mode 2. They wouldn't use that. They could conceivably, here, if they gain enough speed, go into orbit with just the command ship.
And we'd like to try that liftoff again. That was great there, Dick.
My turn next.
That's a report from Jack Wiseman.
Talking to Dick Truly, and Dick Truly doesn't have a mission. So
Not yet.
his turn is a long way down the road.
40 seconds. Downrange now 197 nautical miles, altitude 80 miles, velocity 10,027 feet per second.
Almost 2 miles per second.
Skylab has achieved 34% of the velocity needed for orbit.
Sir, you go at 5, looking real great.
They will be, as you say, 34%, or he did. They will be traveling at 5 miles per second once they're in orbit. So they're at 2 miles per second.
That's kind of difficult to conceive for people like me that travel maybe 60 miles an hour in a car.
Well, think of something 5 miles away and imagine you being able to get there in 1 second.
I can't get from my kitchen to my dining room that fast.
Well, they've been off the pad here, Mike, for 5.5 minutes, and they're about 4.5 minutes away now from
5 minutes, 35 seconds. Downrange 283 nautical miles now.
from reaching orbit.
Miles high, 11,687 feet per second.
That liftoff was perfect. It's the first time I've ever heard one of the astronauts say, we'd like to do that again. It was so good.
You notice how
Go at 6.
You notice how
Roger,
loud it
CDR, go
was.
at
You
6.
reported it from the observation platform. That was because of the cloud overhang here, the cloud layer, compressing the noise actually down to the ground. And it was almost as loud, the way it shook the windows here, almost as loud as a Saturn V.
It was very loud. I was kind of surprised by it.
96 feet per second. Downrange 354 nautical miles, altitude 91.5.
Right on time. Roger, Alpha Charlie. Thanks, sir.
It is interesting, though, the way that...
Want to keep all that down there happy?
He's happy.
The way that rocket gets up through the clouds, and when it hits the cloud layer, it just absolutely, the cloud layer disappears. That hole that it literally burns in the clouds. As it occurred to you,
we just put on the gimbal motors, Houston.
we're now about 7 minutes away from,
Roger,
7 minutes, 15 seconds away from this spacecraft actually being in orbit. I'm sorry, 3 minutes.
4 good gimbal motors, good trims. Your go at 7 minutes, looking real good.
There you go. Have you noticed, or has it occurred to you, as it has to me at this moment, that how nonchalantly these people are about this?
7 minutes, 10 seconds now, downrange 470.
Well, they've been spending the last 2.5 years getting ready for this.
Well, Alan Bean has flown before, but Jack Lausma and Dr. Owen Garrett have not.
I think we're seeing the real technicians taking over from the gee whiz enthusiasts. It's changed quite a bit in the last few years from the real thrill of just being in space to these men are scientists excited about what they can learn. Scientists tend to be a little bit less enthusiastic than
Houston, and we're go at 8.
So we're now 2 minutes away from
Go at
going
8
into
minutes.
orbit.
Propellant utilization shift. The mixture ratio of the propellant has changed now to provide better propellant feed at altitude.
I think what I was really recalling there for a moment, Mike, was the early Mercury days when the nervous voice of the astronaut came back like, what am I doing here? And going into space and in the unexpected ahead. And this is sort of like taking a subway ride, I would imagine.
Yeah, but what a subway and what a train. We're now about a minute and a half from orbital insertion, which is what we're waiting for at this point. Everything is going extremely well. This has been a flawless liftoff. They had that one small fuel leak early and fixed it right away, and that's the only problem that they've had. 9 minutes from liftoff, which means we're 1 minute, 3 seconds away from orbit.
Roger.
You're hearing the voices of the astronauts as they communicate with the mission control in Houston.
The officer Skylab is go at the gate. Passing that gate will commit Skylab to fly over portions of the land masses of Europe and Asia.
CDR Houston, we're predicting the guidance cutoff at 9 plus 5-3.
Roger, 9 plus 53.
It's about 30 seconds
Stand
from
by for
now.
mode 3 alpha capability.
It's mode 3 here going through the gate means, as we were speaking earlier, that if the
second stage, S4B stage, should fail now, they could use the power of the spacecraft alone to go into orbit. So they're there. Well, they're almost in orbit now.
They're using the service propulsion system.
10, 20 seconds now.
Seconds. Right. 125,709. 122.2 by 83.2. We look good.
Sounds real great.
You sure know when it quits.
Roger.
Well, that means they're in orbit.
Yeah. 59 days they're beginning
59 days, Jay. They're going to have the longest manned journey in space in history, and it's almost akin to the excitement, I'm sure, that was felt several hundred years ago when Christopher Columbus and his people came across the ocean.
Houston, we've confirmed your orbit, and your go for orbit looks good.
Okay, tell the guys at KSC thanks. It was a nice job.
Roger, Al.
It certainly was a nice job, and I think that we all felt the excitement down here on the ground at the Kennedy Space Center. About 8.5 hours from now, these three men will link up with their orbiting Skylab workshop to begin 59 days of experiments. This has been NBC's coverage of the launch of the second Skylab crew. I'm Mike Moss, along with Jay Barbary, NBC News at the Kennedy Space Center.